Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Pugna. So Pugna is a very interesting hero mechanically and conceptually. He does a lot of things that other heroes do in Dota. He just does them in a very different way. And I'll get into that when I talk more about the abilities specifically, but also more conceptually about how to think about the hero. But where do we place this hero in terms of roles? Well, he mainly plays mid lane and support. Traditionally, this hero has been a mid laner, and now more recently, it's very, very popular as a support. But for this video, I'm going to focus on the mid lane Pugna, and that's largely because the support Pugna sort of does everything that the mid lane Pugna does. It's just the main difference is from the mid lane, you're more aggressive, you have tempo, you're using your spells offensively, whereas a support Pugna, you're more defensive, the tempo isn't as big of a deal, you're just kind of supporting your team, sitting in the back lines, doing what you need to do to amp up your team with team fights, healing, all this kind of stuff. It's rather simple. I will touch on the support things and, how they differ and some of the stuff when I, go into my clips and the abilities and all that, but we're just going to focus on the mid lane because once you understand how to play this hero from the mid lane, then I think you can easily transition to a support with just a few adjustments. So, how do we think about this hero conceptually, mechanically, these kinds of things? Like I talked about, why is it so unique? Well, from the mid lane, the main way you can think about this hero is a very high magic damage hero that also pushes towers and does a lot of tempo control. You really want to push towers fast, control the game, get map control, and fight with your team, and just be this huge threat early game that pretty much nobody can deal with. The reason why I say it's unique is because this hero does all of those things in a pretty interesting way that not many other heroes do. So a lot of other heroes that push towers, like let's say Dragon Knight, these heroes have right click abilities. Lone Druid would be maybe another one that has the bear that right clicks towers. Tiny is another one that right clicks towers, takes towers super fast. All these heroes, they usually do right click damage. Well, this hero does magic damage to towers, and the way that you actually take the tower is not just by right clicking it or walking up to it. You just kind of use a spell on it, and then you can back off, and then you can use another spell on it once it's off cooldown, and then back off. And you don't really have to commit your hero 100% to take the tower. You just whittle it down over time. It can be very annoying to deal with. It's hard to stop really at all, and you can just take the towers, pretty much all the outer towers in the map, especially the tier ones, very quickly, and there's almost nothing anybody can do. The other thing that this hero does is, like I said, you're very much a tempo setter. You kind of control the map. You really want to snowball with your team, take advantage of your early game timings because you are magic damage centric. You don't want to wait for people to get BKBs or get a lot of HP, these kinds of things. Well, a lot of other heroes that do this kind of stuff, they're either, one, very tanky, let's say like a Bristleback or a Timbersaw. It's you can't fight into them because they're so tanky, it's just impossible to kill them. That's not Pugna at all. Pugna is a intelligence hero, very squishy, can be easily taken down if you have a lot of stuns, a lot of damage, these kinds of things. But the other thing that a lot of those heroes, or heroes that like to do that, also have, let's say, Spirit heroes, Storm Spirit, Ember Spirit, maybe Queen of Pain, these kinds of heroes, from the mid lane is usually they have some kind of mobility, some kind of initiation, some way to cause havoc on the map, to just gank people constantly and kill people, off cooldown, just go around killing everybody on the map, putting so much pressure, and it's hard to deal with them. Pugna doesn't really have that either. Pugna doesn't have any kind of mobility spell. The way Pugna deals with these things and does them the same way, but in a different conceptual way, is that Pugna has two main things. One is the tower push, but the other thing is it's almost impossible to fight into Pugna if he has his teammates around him, especially early game, because of the insane amount of damage and healing that comes out from this hero. You can't really fight into the hero. Now, you don't gank people, you don't initiate on people, but you just kind of walk down a lane and you just use your spells, and early on it's almost impossible for the enemy to fight into you. So you do need a lot of coordination, but if you get that coordination, if you get your team to play with you, you can just be an insane menace in, the early game. You can take all the outer towers, you can pressure the map. It's so hard to deal with you, and I'll show you a little bit more of how that works once we get into the abilities and into the game clips. But yeah, that's basically how you can think about Pugna. Very unique hero. You take the towers, you put pressure, you're super strong and threatening early. You just kind of walk into an area, and as long as your team is with you and you're not going to get stun locked, you will basically kill everybody or kill a lot of people. You do so much damage. That's how Pugna works. Now, obviously, the flip side of that is if you don't have team coordination, if your team aren't playing around you, if you know, they're not there to help you, you can get bursted down pretty easily. Like if there's a lot of stuns that interrupt your abilities, if there's a lot of damage that can come out and there's nobody to really protect you, you are squishy. You know, take a little bit of time to do your magic damage, even though it's kind of bursty, but you still need to kind of sit there in an area. You need your team to play around you. You need them to push and control the map. And you really need this to be effective on Pugna, because if you don't do that and the enemy gets BKBs, they get like hearts, Scotties, you know, satanics, whatever it is, dispels of any kind, all this stuff. Once these carries and mid laners get better items into the, you know, 20+ minute mark, 30+ minute mark especially, Pugna will fall off. Now you can scale with items, you can do more damage, you will always threaten supports, but you know, once people get more tanky, once you can not threaten the cores, you really just aren't as much of a threat. And you start to feel like a third support from the mid lane. That can be kind of annoying, and that's how you fall off. So this is very much an early game hero. It's very complicated. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for a lot of players to play this hero mid at low MMRs. It's definitely a decent support, especially right now. But in general, that's how you can think about the hero. That's the strengths and weaknesses of the hero and how to conceptualize the hero. So now that we understand that in general, let's jump in and take a look at his abilities. So now that we understand Pugna in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that pretty unique hero like I talked about, that sets the tempo, takes towers, does a lot of magic damage, etc. So first we're going to take a look at Q, which is Nether Blast, and this is a pretty straightforward ability. Basically you see there's a cast range here and there's an AoE that comes out, and basically you just place it on the ground, a little animation happens, and then after a short delay, a blast goes off and does damage in that AoE. And basically what you can do is you can just kind of place it on the ground, and even, you know, anything in that AoE, so just the very tip of it, will take damage, and then you can kind of walk away and, you know, do whatever, and it has a very short cooldown, 5 seconds. You can keep using it over and over again, and this is the main way that you're going to be doing damage early on, securing CS, farming, all these kinds of things, but also it does damage to towers. Now it does half damage to towers, you can see right there, so it says deals half damage to structures, but it does work on towers. So basically what you can do is, you, like I said, you can walk up to a tower, make sure it's just, you know, that tip of the AoE there is hitting the tower, and then it works on the tower. You can walk away 5 seconds later. Once it's maxed out, you can use it again. It's actually 5 seconds the entire time, but the damage is higher, obviously, and the radius is the same, the delay is the same, all those kinds of things. Just basically the mana cost and the blast damage change. But regardless, you can siege towers over time very, very effectively. And then one of the things that you buy on this hero, usually, almost every game, even from core positions, is Aether Lens. And so if you can see this, I can cast this ability from pretty far away and hit both of these targets. Like, that's a pretty long range. And unlike, you know, right-click heroes, like even like Sniper or something, who even if I'm Sniper and I'm clicking from pretty far away, I have to commit my hero. I have to sit there and keep attacking over and over again. Pugna's just not like that. You can, you know, use your ability once, back off, go in the trees, wait for it to go off cooldown, use it even from fog again if you want, and then back off, these kinds of things. It's very unique in that way that you can siege towers without really committing your hero into dangerous spots a lot of the time. So it's very unique with that. Like I said, the other way to use this is obviously doing damage in lane, securing CS, farming. This is like kind of your main ability that you're going to be using a lot in the game. So that's Nether Blast. Next, we're going to look at Decrepify. This is his W, and basically what this does is you can just click it on yourself or an ally or an enemy, and you turn them ethereal. So it's basically like a Ghost Scepter, and what this does is it allows the enemy... basically, it doesn't allow them to attack. So if I click it on the axe here, we'll put free spells on for a second, and the axe tries to attack me, he just basically can't. It's just not possible for the axe to attack. So it does disarm them. And then if I use it on myself, I also can't get attacked. The axe can't attack me as well. So it's kind of a dual ability where it can be used offensively or defensively to save people, save yourself, or offensively on the enemy, because the other thing it does, just like Ghost Scepter, is when you use it on the enemy, it amplifies the magic damage that they take. So that's kind of how you use the ability. It's just like amps up your ability to save, your ability to be offensive, especially early on in the game. This amps up damage that you do a lot, and it can be very, very effective. It also is really good at helping you secure CS in the lane, because you use this on the enemy mid laner, and basically they just can't see us. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You can secure range creeps with it, etc. So that's Decrepify. And then next and lastly, for the normal abilities, we see Nether Ward here. And this is a very unique ability. Other abilities like Tombstone and things from Undying are placed on the ground, but this one works in a really interesting way. So basically, you place it on the ground. I actually have to remove free spells here because the AoE that it puts out, so it puts out this like basically debuff on enemies. You can see it being right there on the axe. The debuff that it puts out does a few things. The first main thing that it does is it does damage to enemies when they cast spells. So you can see their axe casted his Battle Hunger. I'll level up the Berserker's Call, and I'll use that as well. And then the axe there just took damage from the Nether Ward because he casted a spell. Now, the way to show you how that works and, you know, the concept of that is basically the mana spent. So if I put free spells on, and I actually have axe cast an ability, it doesn't cost mana, so it takes no damage. So he takes no damage. So basically, this is all about mana spent. So, you know, the heroes that this counters a lot are Skywrath Mage, Necrophos. Some of these heroes that have really, really high mana cost spells, but they don't really care because they have huge mana pools, huge intelligence gain, or a lot of regen, these kinds of things. So any hero like that, it can be very, very effective against because it will do a ton of damage to those kinds of heroes, and usually those heroes are intelligence heroes. And so because of that, they have low HP pools, and that'll do insane amounts of damage to them. The other thing that it does, and this is just a passive thing that it does by sitting there and being in the AoE, is it actually decreases spell damage. So this is another thing. Those heroes that have high mana pools, that usually have high spell costs, also usually do a lot of magic damage. So it just makes it a lot harder for enemies to go into this area, to fight into this area, not only because they're taking damage when they cast their spells, they're just doing less damage, they're taking damage. It's so annoying to fight into this Nether Ward. Now, the way to counter the Nether Ward is kind of like anything else that's placed on the ground by heroes, is they can attack it. So it takes a certain amount of attacks, and then it will disappear. It'll basically be destroyed, and then you have to wait for it to come off cooldown to use it again. But the other thing that you can do is actually, when they are attacking it, you can use your Decrepify, and then it's ethereal, and it can't take any right-click damage. So it actually is another way to just keep it alive, these kinds of things. It's a very unique in that way, where you can just like basically Decrepify to make sure it doesn't get attacked. And it's one of these things that, you know, the enemy can try to commit to it, but then you Decrepify it, and now they have to turn back around, and it just can be super annoying. So you can see how this hero, basically with all these abilities, is able to just kind of control an area, siege a tower, put pressure on the map in a way that a lot of other intelligence heroes with no mobility don't really do. It's very unique. And then lastly, we're going to look at his ultimate, which is Life Drain. So Life Drain is actually pretty straightforward and simple. You just cast it on an enemy, and it just like channels this ability that you just kind of drain the life out of them. Now, I'll stop it there because it is a channeled ability. So if you move or you get stunned, it does cancel it. But if I take this axe and I just click this Pugna here, and you know, you see that there's a little bit of damage done to this Pugna. And then basically I decide as Pugna, like let's say this is happening in a real game, the axe is attacking me, then I start using this. Well, now I'm actually draining health from the axe, and he just can't out damage me based on this drain. And that's why this here also is very, very good early, because not only are you amping up magic damage with Decrepify, doing insane damage with Nether Blast and sieging towers, but now if anybody tries to go on you with right clicks and these kinds of things, you just life drain them and they will just die. It's actually insane how quickly heroes die, especially if you Decrepify them and then you use your life drain. It's very, very hard for them to get away, especially because they're slowed with the Decrepify as well. So you do this, and then they're running, and they're slowed. It's just a really, really hard combo to deal with, especially if you don't have a lot of stuns on the enemy team, because stuns are the only thing that really counters this ability from this hero. And you can see even with this here, 7-second cooldown, you can use it constantly in fights. This has a 7-second cooldown when maxed out. This has a 5-second cooldown. It's just these abilities come off cooldown constantly, so even if you interrupt it once, usually your stun is on cooldown for a little bit, like we see Axe here. This has an 11-second cooldown, so it's like you just have to have so many stuns, so many ways to deal with this, especially early on when you don't have BKBs, you don't have dispels. It's so annoying to fight into Pugna. Now, the other thing that this ability does here, Life Drain, is it actually restores mana once you have full health, which is very interesting, and it also can be used defensively, basically on an ally. So here I'll have this axe attack this other axe, and then I will actually use my Life Drain on an ally, and it'll take my life and give it to the axe. So it basically takes your HP and gives it to the axe. The other thing it does is, here, we'll level up this axe a little bit. Actually, let's just do this real quick. I should have done this before, but it's fine. Level up this axe. And we'll do this. So he casted a few spells there. Oh, wait, I had to take free spells off, my bad. So he did this, he casted his abilities there, and now he has like some mana missing. And so because of that, what you can do is you can actually life drain him. And once he has full HP, his mana starts going up as well. Now you can see you will go down to 0 health. So it's very important to understand that. But you also will restore mana. So this is one of the ways that this hero is used as a support, is because you will usually buy Tranquil Boots. And now you have this constant way to regenerate life, but also then you can, use your ability to drain life from the dummy target here, or like a creep or something like that, and then you can use it on your ally to give them back mana. So this is very good in combo with like a Storm Spirit, any hero that uses a lot of mana, that has health or sustain issues, these kinds of things. That's the way you use this hero from the support position. And then obviously from the core position, you can use a bunch of different things here, like to buy even Dagon or Octarine Core, Ags, all these kinds of things. Very, very good abilities. I will say one thing is that the Shard actually allows you to do, you can cast your life drain on the Shard here, and then it actually drains from everything in an AoE. So it's actually really effective to drain multiple targets and be super, super annoying in fights this way as well. So you can see how this hero scales really well early game. It's just so effective early game. It can scale into the late game with damage, but once BKBs come out and these kinds of things, it's not as good. It's not as effective. So that's Pugna. Those are all of his abilities. That's how to think about them in general, both offensively and defensively. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. So now we're jumping into a replay here of Topson playing mid Pugna, his famous mid Pugna. He's so good at this hero, and this laning stage, the first few waves here are just quintessential laning on Pugna, and almost any hero for that matter, but just what he does here is so, so good. So he immediately starts right-clicking the range creep, and he takes his Q level 1, and then he secures both CS with that Q, and then he kind of just pushes the wave in pretty fast because of the Q. So he kind of threatens the Q. He's against, obviously, a melee hero, Ember Spear, not super strong, level 1. And then because of that, he's able to secure his level 2, get his Decrepify level 2, and then look at this. 0 CS, 0 denies so far on this Ember. Now Ember's competing level 1 with the tower for last hits, and with the Pugna that's a level 2 Pugna for last hits. He also has 59 damage. So he gets the deny on the range creep there. It's just so, so hard for the Ember to do anything. And you can see Ember has 1 last hit in the first 2 waves. And obviously, this isn't some like Herald Ember. This is a high MMR. I don't know what this guy's MMR is, but he's probably like 8k, 9k even. I mean, Topson's matched against him, so he's probably pretty decent. And he has 1 last hit in the first 2 waves. This is just perfect clinical play here from Topson in the mid lane. Just perfect, perfect play. You can see he's just constantly spamming his abilities off cooldown, securing his CS. He has his bottle coming out. It's 1 minute and 45 seconds, so he can have the full bottle charges there. And I always harp on that to everybody that plays mid. Is like, you just got to get this bottle before 2 minutes, and it's perfect for that. Perfect timing. So he gets all these charges. He's basically back up to full regen, and then he's going to get these runes at 2 minutes. And then from here, he just basically keeps doing what he's doing. Using your Q for last hits, using your Decrepify to try to make the enemy not last hit, these kinds of things, and then harassing them when possible. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, especially against a melee hero like Ember. It's really not that complicated. He's actually able to get the rune right out from under the Ember. That feels so bad. He's absolutely just dominating this lane. It's absolutely ridiculous. If you want to learn how to play Pugna, watch a Topson replay. This guy is absolutely insane. So that's the laning stage. It's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. I will fast forward a little bit after this, so once we start getting to the point where we pressure the tower, because this early part of the lane is straightforward and simple. Watching this is just exactly what you want to do, but eventually you do want to start pressuring the tower, so let's just jump ahead to that point. Now I jumped ahead a couple minutes here, and it's just hitting 5 minutes, and he's level 6 while the Ember is level 4. And you can see what he does here. He immediately gets aggressive onto the Ember, not only because he has an advantage, but this is what you want to do. You want to push out the wave and then threaten the tower. And you can see what he does. He threatens the tower with a blast, plus harassing the enemy at the exact same time. And he will do this over and over again, where he hits the tower while harassing the enemy. So the monkey is here. He does see the monkey, but the monkey jumps in, gets some harass damage out. He's pretty low, and unfortunately he will die here because he underestimates the damage from the Sleight of Fist from Ember. Even though he has like 12 stick charges, he easily could have lived there. So it is a big blunder, especially because he was crushing the lane. But just in general, that's what you want to be doing on this hero. So even though he did make a mistake there, he was aggressive in the exact way that I want you to be aggressive on Pugna from the mid lane, because the goal of this hero is once you hit 6, once you can be aggressive around that 5 to 6 minute timing, push the wave in, hit the tower with your Q over, and over again. Use the rune to restore mana, all these kinds of things, and basically get this tower down before 10 minutes. That is your goal on this hero, is get that mid tower down before 10 minutes, and you can do it in pretty much every game. Because you can see here, he can kind of wrap around the side of the tower, and he can cast this ability from Fog. So even if you are not doing well in the lane, or there's like a Huskar or something, which I think you can actually do pretty well against Huskar early on, but in any case, like maybe even Viper or something, there's some kind of hero that annoys you that's pretty hard to deal with, and you don't really like to deal with it, you can just run around to the side of the tower, cast it from Fog, and you'll be very effective. Now, the other thing I am going to show you here, just because it's obviously in the clip, and it is something this hero can do, is this hero doesn't gank effectively like a Storm or a Ember or anything like that, but if you get a good rune and you have the opportunity, you can totally rotate, because early on, especially when the enemy doesn't have a lot of ults and they don't have a lot of ways to deal with you, once you hit 6, you are just outputting so much damage. It's actually insane how much you're going to be doing. And you can see there he uses the haste rune, which is probably the best rune on this hero early on, because of the mobility that it gives you, and the ability to just go to a side lane very quickly. Is you can definitely gank, you can put pressure on side lanes, but the main thing you're going to be wanting to do is getting this mid tower, and then you can rotate to the side lanes and put more pressure that way, but obviously use runes to your advantage as well. So that's pretty much how to transition into the later part of the lane with Pugna. So now I fast forwarded again here, only a couple minutes, and we can see it's 9 minutes in, and he's getting aggressive here to try to take this tower down. But the other thing that I want to show you is not only does he take the tower down before 10 minutes, which you can get in almost every single game, but look at the amount of damage that he is soaking here and just draining that Monkey King, and then getting aggressive here onto the Ember. All of that magic damage, all of those right clicks, everything that they're using to try to kill the Pugna, and it just doesn't work, because this hero is so hard to deal with if you don't have stuns. And so we can see the Monkey King use the stun early, and once that stun was committed, there's just nothing that the Ember or the Monkey can do. They can try to click the Pugna as much as possible. They can do whatever they, whatever they want to do. You can use a bunch of remnants, a sleight of fist. It just doesn't matter. He's able to out-sustain you as long as he's casting Life Drain. And then you can see they go aggressive here, and they go onto this Necro. It's just a very easy kill with that combination there of all those things, and he's very effective against those kinds of heroes. And then the transition out of that, out of getting mid tower, these kinds of things, is going immediately top. So he goes top here. This is where you want to be playing. After you get the mid tower, you want to get the top tier 1 tower, and you want to invade the enemy jungle. That's the main way you're going to be playing, and you can see how with team fights, with grouping up with your team, it's just so hard for the enemy to deal with you at this early point in the game. So that's the main thing I wanted to show you, is that transition out of the laning stage after you pressure the tower, and how this hero is so hard to deal with. So I skipped ahead a little bit here, actually a lot, because basically for the last like 10 minutes or so, he's just kind of been running around with his team, and that's really what you want to do. If you watch the last 10 minutes, he was running around with his supports and DK like the entire time. And this is what you want to be doing. I think in the past, though, why he was kind of doing so poorly is largely because he was putting himself in the front lines and not kind of sitting in the back, able to use his abilities. But what happens is, in this fight, and why I wanted to show you this, is because basically you are most effective when you allow your allies, whether it's the Juggernaut in this game, the DK, even the Mirana and the Shadow Demon, to take the front line and take the bulk of the damage in the spells. When you tank, when you sit in front, it's just always going to be bad news, because you want to sit in the back, use your abilities, you have good cast range, you're almost always going to be buying Aether Lens like he has here. It's just going to be really bad for you to kind of try to go in. Now, I think in the past, I don't see the typing, or I don't hear the comms. I'm sure he's trying to like force stuff and get his enemy to do, his allies to do things with him, but it just wasn't working. So now he's kind of sitting in the back. He's sitting around his teammates, just clustering up, making sure that he's not the one taking the brunt of the damage. And if he does take damage, or if he does take spells, the Shadow Demon is going to be there. The other, his teammates are going to be there to try to help him. You also see that he is calculating that that fight is going to go relatively well, because the Monkey King died early. And the Monkey King is honestly their main stun. They have Searing Chains, they have Silence from DP, they do have the ultimate from Necro, but especially once Necro used that ultimate in the very beginning there to try to, secure the kill on Pugna or do something, which I don't really know, is kind of a weird ultimate there from the Necro. But once the Necro stun was used from his ultimate, and because the Monkey King was dead, the Pugna has free reign. So that's the main thing you want to be thinking about in fights as well. Not only do you want to be in the back, but once the stuns are committed, you have free reign. So you really don't want to go in and commit and really show yourself, or, be threatened until the stuns are cast by the enemy. Because once they commit their stuns and they're off cooldown or they're not available because they're dead, you will just destroy in fights. And that's the main thing to think about Pugna in fights, especially mid-game. Now, I jumped ahead a little bit here, and the main thing I want to show you here is kind of like how you can support your team, whether it's even from the mid lane or even as a support. This is mainly how this hero is going to be played as a support, and I'm going to show you this around the Roche pit. Now, he can actually go in, and you can do a good bit of damage to Roche actually by yourself. The problem is every time you get bashed there, like you see, you have to recast your ability, so you have to hope that he doesn't bash you. Also, you don't get mana from any creep or just unit other than heroes when you're full health. So that is something to consider. But because he has a regen here, he's able to just cast all of his abilities. But this is the main thing that you want to do as Pugna, whether you're mid or even as a support, is you want to secure an area with your ward. So you can see he places it in a place where it's hard for the enemy to get to, but it is aggressive, so they're going to be in the AoE. And then he uses his ultimate on the Juggernaut to get the Juggernaut up to full health, to support the Juggernaut, to get him to full mana. Basically just sitting in the back, supporting his team, making sure that they are the ones that are survivable, and not necessarily using his abilities aggressive, but also using them defensive. And so this is kind of a great example of how to use this hero, not only from the mid lane where you can be aggressive, but as a kind of defensive support as well, with your ward, with your ultimate on your allies, on your Juggernaut, on your carry, on your other heroes that are strong as well. That's, I think, a great example. And they take this really effective team fight, largely because if you've noticed this entire time, what has been the kind of consistent, stable thing that's happened? Yes, he's used abilities. Yes, he's, helped save his teammates or these kinds of things. But the main thing that happened that entire fight was the Nether Ward was in the Roche pit the entire fight. Like, it literally just disappeared right before I think they killed that Ember. And that is such a big part of this hero, no matter what role you're playing it in, because you need to have very good Nether Ward placements. If you waste this Nether Ward and you place it in a weird spot, or it's too aggressive and they can just kill it very easily, then that can honestly determine a fight. But because he placed it in a spot where they don't necessarily have vision, because it's in the Roche pit, but it's aggressive enough that they're going to be, in that AoE the whole time, that is the key to the fight. Placing it in the war, in the trees, placing it somewhere that's both aggressive enough that they will be in the AoE, but defensive enough that they can't attack it. That is honestly one of the biggest keys to Pugna, especially later in the game. Once people have BKBs, once people have a lot of, things to deal with your spells, that Nether Ward is really the main way you're going to be contributing to fights, as well as sitting in the back and healing up your allies like we see here. So that honestly is the main way to play Pugna, not only from the mid lane, but also as a support. I didn't really comment too much on the support variations, but really as a support, you're just going to be casting your ultimate on your allies to heal them up and give them mana. That's honestly the main thing you're going to be doing. It's kind of like a boring hero in that sense, placing the Nether Ward and using your ultimate on your allies, but that is pretty much how you play this hero support. So that is my Pugna guide. That's how to play the hero. The hero isn't really conceptually difficult in how to understand it, but it's more the execution can be very difficult because it's very all or nothing. It's very hit or miss. It's very punishing if you're not in the right position, if you're too aggressive, if you put the Nether Ward at the wrong spot, these kinds of things. It's difficult to play, even if it's not conceptually challenging to understand what the abilities do and how to play the hero in general. So that is Pugna. That's my Pugna guide. I hope everybody enjoyed that. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Join the Discord if you haven't already. You can request replay reviews there. We also do community days on Saturday. I also have a Patreon. If you want to see more videos like this into the future, consider supporting me to help me keep doing this into the future. I also offer coaching there as well. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.